Hey everyone, I'm James Otter of Otter Surfboards, where we design and make wooden surfboards here in Cornwall. And I'm going to show you how we turn these into one of these. Hey everyone, welcome to part 4 of how we make wooden surfboards here in the Otter workshop. In the previous video, you saw me build up our rail strips that run from the nose to tail down the side of the board. And the next thing I need to do is to cut the end of the rail strips so I can fill solid pieces of wood into the nose and tail. And I'm going to make those out of this piece of cedar, and you'll be able to watch me getting those all fitted up. In order to fit the nose blocks up here, the first thing I need to do is remove these rail strips from either side. And to do that, I'm going to cut a series of cuts down into those rail strips and then use a chisel to knock the rest of it away. I'm going to use my Japanese saw for doing this that's got a spine along the back, and that means that I can end up with a nice straight cut. And that's really important actually for when we fit the solid block in. To have a nice clean edge means we'll get a really nice join. So here goes. Up at the nose here, the first cut that I did is really crucial because I want it to be flush with the last rib here, because that's where the join is going to sit, right up against that face. So I've now got to get the chisel in and make sure that it's nice and neat. Nice, so that's given me a nice clean finish to the end of those rail strips. Just going to jump on the other side and do exactly the same. So now I've cut those up at the nose here and made nice clean surfaces to fit our blocks to. I'm going to go down to the tail and do exactly the same. At the nose, our template was fairly typical for a surfboard, but at the tail, we're looking to create a swallowtail. And in order to make the blocks to fit for the swallowtail, what I like to do is have the rails continue all the way down the outside of the board, and then create a solid block at the tail that miters into that on each corner. And I also like the tail block, the grain, to run lengthways, and that's a couple of reasons really. It'll just cope with dings a lot better, and it'll absorb a bit more resin as well, so it'll just be a tougher finish at the tail of a board, which often gets a lot of knocks. So in order to do that, what I need to do is mark a square line off the end of the board, which I did when we laid the frame on. We put an end point for the board where we know it needs to finish. Need to take that onto the rail strips and then work out where my miter wants to go. Cut these off, and then I can make sure that the tail blocks that we create are then going to fit into that space nicely. So luckily, I know our final rib is nice and straight at the tail here, and I know that the space I need is 6 inches, which is exactly the width of this square, which is very helpful to make sure it's all nicely lined up. And then I've got to take that pencil line across onto those rail strips there. Cool, so that's where the board will finish. But like I say, I want to miter this join in. So I'm actually going to use a different straight edge. And I tend to, rather than try and mathematically work out where that halfway through that join is, what I tend to do is just use the same point on the frame to meet with this straight edge. So I pick that point there. And I always think as long as I do the same on both sides, then we'll end up with a nice symmetrical finish on the board. Sweet. Now I can get cutting. Now we've got our tail cut on both sides and our nose cut on both sides. It's time to make the blocks that are going to fit in there. So I'm going to use our tail template and our nose template. Mark out some blocks to cut out of the offcut of cedar that we had ready at the start. I'm trying to utilise as much of this as I can. Get those roughly cut out and then start working out how they're going to fit best in the board. With those marked out, I'm going to head over to the bandsaw to get them cut out. Now we've got those cut out on the bandsaw. I leave a little bit extra on because there's a little bit of tweaking to do to make sure they fit at the nose and the tail. So I've got these guys for the tail. There we go, fit the nose ones first. First things first, as you can see, our nose piece of our stringer wasn't ever glued down, so we're going to remove that. And then with our nose block on this side, where I've cut with the bandsaw, it's not actually the correct angle for where we need it to meet in here. So I'm going to have to go and recut that angle, check that this end meets through the middle of our center strip, get them all lined up, and then I can get them clamped on. Okay, so now I am happy with the angle of this cut in here. I just want to draw a center line down the middle here to match this face into, and then we can get it clamped on. Okay, so I'm going to pop some glue on here and on that joint there. Spread it out nicely and you get it clamped on. Things at the tail here look a little bit different because of the way we extend the rail strips right down to the back corner of our swallowtail. So the swallowtail is going to give us a shape like this at the tail. So we've got these smaller blocks, and I need to now measure out and mark up how this miters into the way these rail strips finished. Remember when I was cutting that angle, it was a case of sharing that between the tail block and the rail strips. So I need to offer this up, not there. Cool. So I'm going to cut that, and it should fit nicely then into where we need it. So we've got our first tail block and our first nose block fitted. It's time to get the second one in. I've already cut and made sure these are all the right shape and size, so it's time to get them glued in. That's our nose and tail blocks fitted. I really love seeing the boards at this stage because you can see the whole outline of the board come together. The next thing I've got to do to this one is prepare the rails and those tail blocks to accept the deck. So there's a fair bit of work to do, ready to glue the top on. Once I've done that, we'll be ready to get into the shaping. If you've enjoyed this video, feel free to like and subscribe below. Or if you'd like to get your hands on one of our surfboards, you can join us here in the workshop to make your own on one of our 5-day Make Your Own Surfboard courses. Or you can order a custom straight from us. All of the information can be found easily enough on our website at ottersurfboards.co.uk. Thanks for watching.